Welcome to the Biocharisma Podcast. Today we have Heidi Love. She returns for a second time to tell us about some of the occult origins to the three-letter agencies that we know of. And obviously we have to get into a lot of the ex-Mo world. That's not the ex-Missouri world. That's the ex-Mormon world. Heidi's wonderful. She has the Unfiltered Rise podcast, which I enjoy on the regular. It's she brings a lot of things to my attention that have been dissolving a bunch of ideas that were given to me by the spaghetti Western films of my youth. I'm so happy to be able to let go of that nonsense. So thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. If you like what we're doing here at Biocharisma Podcast, you can always support me. You can buy me a coffee. If you're into Vortex water, clean water, you can buy a Mayu Swirl Vortexer. I'm going to be bringing more things to market, and I have a good announcement about another channel I'm creating at the moment that where I'll be doing lots of reviews of things that I've used throughout the years that I have found to be very effective. So thank you again for joining, and I will see you on the flip side. Heidi Love, welcome to the Biocharisma Podcast for your second time.
Yay! I'm so excited to talk to you. I love talking to certain people because we're like on the same wavelength or something, right?
Yes.
Like we just talked about that. And I do this with Tim Constantine and it scares him, I think. This freaks Tim out. I love Tim. You should have him on. But he always is like, why do you know what's going on in my brain? I'm like, no, I think we're all like supposed to know this right now. And he's like, you're weird. But
That's funny. Well, we are 76ers. I have the same relationship
Yes.
with Jim Lee of the Climate Viewer. I don't know if you've seen any of Jim Lee's work, but he's the man that's pretty much spearheaded the way of actually describing correctly to the public what all the weather modification is above us.
Oh,
And he's
cool.
actually been called to Congress a bunch of times to testify. I think he's a part of like 20 different lawsuits
Oh,
that are being filed by different attorney generals towards the federal government and private contractors that are modifying the sky. So like
they are.
yeah, and he's a fellow 76er. He's a fire dragon. So
Yay.
yeah, we're kind of kicking ass and taking names. It's a good thing. I
Sometimes
had
I
to
get
have
sometimes I get mine kicked. I don't know if you saw this week.
what happened?
I was like, what is happening? I had a semi pretty big podcast like put out this rebuttal, but it wasn't a rebuttal. I'm happy to do rebuttals. I'm happy to hear rebuttals on any theology because I'm not a historian. I'm just an
Mhm.
independent researcher. So of course, maybe you get it wrong. But when your rebuttal has just these people that like bring up my name 2,000 times and then like just completely call me names and just that it was bad. It wasn't theology. It wasn't argument. It wasn't debate. It wasn't even any of that. It was just like a hit show. And then I was so upset because I was like, did you not vet these people or was this set up? You know, this feels weird. But then, yeah. And then there was other stuff going on in my regular life and it was a bad week at work. And I was just like, wow, this is awesome.
Well, it's crazy. I don't know. I know you're a Christian, but not like the standard run of the mill. Let's go to
No,
church and
I'm a weirdo. Yeah.
Jesus absolved me of everything. Like you're very well educated. You're like I call it mystical Christianity. It's much more in the vein of I've done a bunch of podcasts with I don't know if I'm allowed to say his real name, with Professor Longo on the Byzantine
Oh, yeah,
Empire
yeah, yeah. Professor
in the
Longo. Yeah.
in the split between essentially Roman Catholicism in the Eastern and Western Roman they call it Catholic because Catholic actually means universal, but the
Oh, okay.
universal religion that was started after Christ. In the eastern side, which went to the Byzantium, which went to Turkey, essentially went to the area that we now know as Istanbul. It used to be called Byzantium, or that was actually given. It was the Byzantine Empire, and that side could a lot of people that are in the camp of the little season, but
Oh yeah.
are more materialist. They look at the Byzantine Empire as being the 1,000-year reign of Christ. And
Okay.
I think there's a possibility to that, because when you follow the Eastern thread, that's where you get the much more mystical Christian. That's where you get the person that does question everything like the Bible tells us to. It
So you're talking
does.
about Al Kindi. You're talking about Al Kindi and like all these people like back in the day, like
Who's Al
that.
Kindi? I don't know who that is.
Oh, we'll talk about Al Kindi because we're going to talk about John Dee. But
Yes.
we'll get there when we get there. But I do think there is something to this. And though I am a Christian, it does not mean I don't heavily study the occult,
Right.
anthroposophy, theosophy, all these things, because I promise people you will never understand what you're doing if you don't understand the full picture. You have to look at
Precisely.
the paper. Yeah, and this is the nice thing that the mystery school people get. The left-hand pathers get this
Yes.
because they can't be a left-hand pather till what? Till they know everything. And then they like literally have to choose the bad side even though they know the good side. It's wild to me. And so they make a decision, but they get the whole show notes, right? They get it all. It's like they're the Patreon subscribers and they still want to go that way. And I'm like, wow, that's wild. But yeah, it's what it
Well,
is.
so the mystic Christianity included all the alchemists. And
Mm-hmm.
so the I'm a big fan of alchemy. I actually know two alchemists that are humongous lovers of Christ. In fact, they
I'm not
always,
against alchemy. Yeah,
yeah,
I can't be a nurse
right.
and be a practitioner without alchemy. Now, however, I'm not a normal nurse either. I'm not for everything. So that's a whole nother story. But I don't just, I was taught to think for myself when I went to school. Like
Mhm.
nowadays, they just want you to you're like a little brown shirt and you're just supposed to do everything. And I'm not like that. So
It's exactly.
super
They're
popular.
right now they've actually conditioned most people under operant conditioning. And that's something that my audience knows very well. Conditioning just has you always responding. It never
Yes.
actually allows you to critically think. And so here, like this audience has much more critical thinking skills, at least hopefully. At least that's the way it's been curated up to this point. I wanted to
Amazing.
have you on because the last 6 months I've been listening to you. You've been knocking
Mhm.
it out of the park with the connection between John Dee, who was essentially the the black magician, the mystical underwriter of the English, the English. There he is. I saw him on your bookshelf there.
Yes.
Of the English Empire. He was I don't even know exactly what his title is or was.
He was part of the court, but he wasn't he was in the court but not of the court, if that makes sense, because his
Hmm.
dad was the linen purchaser for Queen Elizabeth I. And so he was in court, but John Dee was like, I kind of am smarter than that. And I would like a better position. He really wanted to be higher up in positioning. And so he held back, and I don't think he ever became a member of the court, but he was her advisor. That's what a lot of people will say,
Hmm.
off the books. Yeah.
It's
So,
amazing. I've listened to a bunch of other people speak about John Dee, like actual historians on G. I wish I could remember I'll remember the name eventually. I followed this gentleman on Substack that has been breaking down John Dee, and he said something that rung the chord for me that my friend Ollie Demigard of Light on Conspiracy has been saying for a long time is what is it with the gay people in like running the world? Like the power structure of the world, like John Dee was a very like he was quote unquote married, but I think he was 45 when he married a 13-year-old, and it was very well known that within the time that he was coming up that he was, had many, same-sex lovers and things like that. But there's so much of this occultism thing, this occultism thread that I see with the transsexual, the homosexual. It's like this, like it's almost this. anytime that you go into vice really, really deeply, you end up, there's something that occurs within this realm where there's a perversion that has to happen when you go
Mhm.
that way. And I know like a lot of people that have homosexual tendencies. I'm not saying everyone, but some of them that's caused through trauma ritual. And we know these
Right.
people love their trauma rituals. I mean, it's just like,
Well,
there's
and
so
look at Crowley. You've read his writings.
exactly
Like where is how can you obtain your third eye?
right.
And your face says it all. And then, it gets to this point. And I do think that the deviancy, in my opinion, look, people have come at me this week. I'm going to tell people something. I'm a mom of 6 kids. I'm a grandma. I
Mhm.
work. I'm a nurse. I study all the time, but I am
Right.
not a doctor. I'm not a historian. But I know a lot because I spend a lot of time because I am curious. That's like, there's no other reason. And it isn't just Mormons. That just happens to be my thing because I lived it and I was it. And that's it. It's not like Catholics are better or something or other people or I don't care. Like people are like, oh, you just can't leave Mormonism alone. No, Mormonism is a key aspect for Hermeticism in United States of America. Without it, we cannot understand what exactly is happening here. Do I think it was right the way he went about it? No. I think once they get into it, like what you're saying, there is that Faustian bargain and we're going to, you have to look at it like John D. He gives up his wife and lets Edward Kelly do what he wants. And then what happens? She gets pregnant and he has to raise his son. And then he has this horrible life and almost everyone he loves dies. And like, it's just awful, but he loved God. Don't misunderstand. I don't know that John D was inherently a left-hand pather. I really think he was on the direction of I love God, I need more. And when you do that, right, what does God say in the scriptures? Well, you will never understand me because I am not you. You are of me, but I am not you, and you won't. He basically tells Job, "Where were you when I hung the stars?" Like he's like very shitty about it, right? In the scriptures, he's like, "You weren't there, and you don't get it, but we are of him. We still are his children." It's like expecting an 8-year-old to know everything about life. It's not going to happen. We're never going to know everything, I think. But uh-oh, uh I lost audio. Can you
Sorry, I
hear
had it
me?
on mute.
Oh,
I had it on
oh, there
mute.
we go. Okay,
My
cool.
my kitty was going off. I just want to make sure that wasn't filtering through. All my pets are inside because it's raining really hard here. Um, so let's just zoom out just for a second and get a picture. This is the way I've been sort of workshopping this whole thing. We have somebody that's doing mystical rites, which John Dee and Edward Kelly, in their own writings, at the bare minimum, they were trying alchemy. They were doing scrying mirrors. They were doing these things that kind of gave them an insight into extra extra information,
Yes,
and
definitely. They
and
are
pretty
piercing veils. Yes, they are.
and, and piercing veils is very much where you get into like the three-letter agencies of today. Like
Hmm.
this whole need for data and information acquisition, a lot of people point all the way back to John Dee as being the progenitor of, MI, what became MI5, MI6, and all this stuff.
The original 007 is what he
Exactly.
was. Yeah.
Exactly. So in this, we have an empire that grows. Britain ends up becoming the world's seafaring, albatross. They end up having territories all over the place. The royal family pretty much was the biggest landowner for a very, very long time. And in this, we have this creation of a land, the North American continent, the new Atlantis, as it was coined. Some called it the New Rome.
Right.
From my opinion, and this is just my opinion, I think it was actually the original Atlantis, the original Rome. Whenever they say new, it's old. So so you have this land that is very obviously a Masonic creation. People want to
Yes.
call the United States of America and the 13 colonies that founded it a Christian country. It was not. It was a mis
Well, it
it no
was disguised, right? This was a big hoodwinking. Let's use
right,
that word, because they could not do what they were doing where they were. They were actually being extremely persecuted, and to be unpersecuted, they said, "Well, you can come too. You can come too. You want to talk about God all day, like you can come too." And then they did what they wanted, right?
right. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
United States of Freemasonry for sure.
Exactly. So the free Masonic thing, back when there was a lot less people and there was a lot less information, you know, the to be able to get within a fraternal group that would ensure that you would have business relationships, I mean, that had real clout. I mean, that's like something
Mhm.
that we don't really understand today because we're all kind of fat and happy with all of our conveniences. But back then, like if you had an in with like, the the new royals, the nouveau riche, that would ensure so many things for you. There were so many compromises that would be willing to be made. And that's sort of the canvas that I see that North America was, or
Yeah.
I'll just call it the Americas. We know it because
Yeah.
we know North America per se because this is where we live. But even when I lived in Central America, hearing all the hijinks that went down in Central America, it was like, with down in Central America is much more the Spanish energy than it was the actual English energy that we're talking about today. But we have this Freemasonic input that comes in, and it kind of is the organizational, matrix that makes North America. I want you to take us into how the genesis of the Joseph Smith family actually then comes and then brings this energy to the West, all the way to Utah and the Mormon faith.
Okay. Well, I think that it's important to understand that Joseph Smith's family, it doesn't have anything to do with Utah. Okay. This is a Brigham Young thing, and you can chuck that out the water. But Joseph Smith's
Okay.
family is people that are important and they lie. So the church is obfuscating the fact that for 5 generations, the Smiths came from near Topfield, Massachusetts. They came here, and actually, his great great grandpa, I'm going to find this quote, and this is from, because people have been asking me all kinds of things now about my sources. So I understand that, and that's great. But this is straight from the church's website on genealogy. And this was like about his progeny, basically. And so, anyways, we talk about these people coming from Topsfield, okay? And this is a colonial family. They were not poor. In fact, the great great grandpa is a lawyer because he is an esquire. I found it and I was like, oh my gosh. They try to make out these people like they're so stupid and they don't know anything. No, not so much. Okay. So also they were statesmen, and his great great grandpa were statesmen for years, I think upwards of 20 years. But this is the best thing ever. When you ask me about George Washington and settlers and this kind of stuff, I put it in, and I didn't know anything about this, but boy, was this interesting. So I want to find the actual quote of what his great great grandpa was involved with in that area, because as somebody that was a statesman and of the Commonwealth, he was pretty much in charge of a lot of things around that time. And he is completely involved and actually claimed there are many claims that say he planned the Boston Tea Party.
Oh, wow.
So his name is Samuel Smith, and I'm going to read you exactly what this says. And it's wild. I had no idea. In fact, I hadn't looked at it until we started talking about this, and I was like, "Whoa, that's wild." Hmm. I wonder what that's about. So it says Samuel Smith, chairman of his small towns committee, had to respond to the tea protest. Into Samuel Smith was the leader of the protest itself. So I'm just saying this is all from a genealogy website on and also so two different sites. This is from what's that genealogy site called? The Mormon one, familysearch.org. And this is all like historically documented. And also Boston 775 blogspot.com. He's got all of this lined out for like the whole back genealogy of the family. Okay. And their legacy and their legality and the biography. These are like literally. And also another source that he cites is Colonial Families of the U.S. Mackenzie Volume 3. So just so you guys know, I'm not making shit up because I get tired of that. So they immigrated originally from England in 1638 to Boston. That is what they say. Now, I'm telling you guys, if you look through the church website, they'll be like, oh, we don't know for sure. And I'm like, that's not true. The uncle stayed there and this grandpa is super important and all this stuff. Well, there's a reason why they don't want you to know. Because eventually this turns into the Inquisition. Okay. And in fact, they try to say, oh, he was just rumored to be a part of it, maybe sort of. He later accuses, listen to this, his aunt by marriage. This is not some neighbor he once knew, some lady down the road. No. This is his aunt by marriage. They do make sure to say by marriage. Mary Easty, who is one of the three daughters of William Town of Topsfield, and they were accused of witchcraft in 1692. So Samuel's grandson, Azael Smith, wrote this whole thing in letters, and there's all these documents. Like, this is very documented information. And that he accused her of witchcraft to the point where she was hung. So it doesn't look amazing for, the great grandpa of Joseph Smith to be involved in witchcraft stuff at all, because then it gets you down, oh, maybe that girl's right, maybe they are involved in something weird, oh, what's that about? So they don't want any of that, because then it leads to the magus, it leads to all these things like, oh, maybe they did know something. And then you get to these weird little stories, right? Like even of the next one down, this guy's son, his name is Azael,
Azael,
Asael.
yeah. Nice
And
angel
people
name.
are like, oh, that's just because it's in the Bible. No, it isn't. It's in the book of Enoch. Look it up.
Right.
And so the way it's spelled, that is in the book of Enoch. And they're not supposed to know about the book of Enoch because they say Joseph never read it. BS. He made a whole thing about Enoch. We'll get there. But anyways, they knew. And so Azael has been like very rumored. These people were not religious. They would not join the mainstream religion. Yet they're Masons and Universalists. Very interesting, isn't it? And so I'm like, okay, and I'm not against that theory by any means. I mean, Universalism is way nicer than Mormonism.
Well, what is that? What is that theory? I don't even know what Universalism is.
So basically that everybody goes to heaven and God has a ton of grace for us because he loves his children, which I'm like, probably true. All that. Yeah, let's get on it. Like, I don't know the specifics otherwise than that. So I don't want to say I'm some learned scholar of that. I don't know the ins and outs. It sounds good on the surface level. I've never deep dove Universalism, but that's basically what he believed. He didn't want to have anything to do with organized religion. He was very against it. And that just doesn't seem of the day, right? Like, this is a very puritanical society, and especially where they're coming from and living. And it doesn't seem like it necessarily fits the motif. And I do think he was against the grain. Like, you're talking about somebody that was clearly very learned, to be an attorney, to be a scholar, to be, this statesman, all this stuff. He had money. When he died, there was a large estate left. Like, the only reason why Joseph Smith and his family were poor is because they didn't like to work a whole lot, even though people say that, oh, that's a lie. They weren't lazy. Yeah, they kind of wanted to do their own thing. And that comes from having that upbringing, right? Like what you said, like, if you've never known work, you're not going to go regular work. You're going to do magical stuff you learned, like water witching and treasure digging. And I'm not going to curse him for it. I'm just saying, like, this makes a lot of sense. Okay. He learned it clearly. And I think just like John Dee at some point, I think maybe his intentions were good. And then you get off the beaten path because, just like John Dee, like you said, then we get into like young girls and weird things and wife swapping. And then we get into Joseph and polygamy and young girls. And it's like the same thing every single time, like Muhammad and the young girls. And it's fun. You can go look it up yourselves, but like, it's just like, it's the same story every single time. And people have a really hard time with the thought that, okay, we love God and we believe in God and we believe in angels, but we can't believe in fallen angels. And we certainly can't believe in angels that know everything about us from birth and that
Right.
cover down your whole bloodline. Well, the Bible talks about that, right?
Totally. So can I
uh,
give you a rabbit hole to
yes,
study it in the future? And
absolutely.
I think it's gonna give you a real a real big thing to bite into. So,
Mm,
my wife's family is from Massachusetts. My family's from Massachusetts. My wife and I think we're like, really, really distant kissing cousins. The Smith
that's funny.
family and the Gardner's family were both landed in her family's name is Smith and my family name is Gardner. And they both we have both sides. We have origins all the way back to Massachusetts into the 1600s. And she was her family was related to William Penn of the what Pennsylvania was actually named after. But
Hmm.
the thing I want you to dig into is looking into the Jewish origins of the Puritans.
Yeah.
Because the
Well,
Puritans, we were taught, or at least I was taught, were Christian.
right.
And it would be more accurate to call them the Puritans. And
Yes,
so
right.
a lot of what the Salem witch trials were actually after, like the people that were causing that persecution were at the nth degree like failed Kabbalists.
Hmm.
They were the Puritans. They were like essentially when you take if the standard practice is to say that these women were sinners. That's like in our generation, that's what we were told. We know it wasn't that. A lot of these women actually had a lot of knowledge. A lot of them actually carried genealogical information. And that's why it made me think of this with you, because like you're like so on the tip of genealogy and the people that are actually following genealogies. And and also this makes me think of the Mormon Church in the sense that the Mormons and Kabbalah, like you look at
Yeah.
Masonry, Kabbalah, and Mormonism, and like all those gears fit perfectly together.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
And
Well,
so
did you see my show on Martinism? Did you happen to
no, and
catch that?
I wanted you to
Okay.
explain that.
So that is a huge component of this, I feel. And
Great.
Martinism is actually a Freemasonic order, but they are a practicing magical order. And I don't mean they read about it, I mean they practice magic. And so, they talk about that they go out a couple times a year. Funny thing, they do this on the spring equinox and the fall equinox, and it's the only time they can pierce the veil and summon what they think is angels. Now, do I think that Joseph Smith knew exactly what he was doing all the time that he was doing it? No. And guess what? Crowley didn't either. And there might be a Loch Ness monster because of it. Like, come on. There's some weird stuff that happens when you don't know what you're doing exactly to a T, right? Eventually he does, but he forgot or whatever that day, and Parsons didn't do it right. And like we get all these weird phenomena from it. Like it can't mean nothing. And this gets into magical rites. And Martinism is a much better fit because everybody just wants to say, well, he was in the Scottish Rite. I'm like, okay, well, I do a show with a Mason, and he's told me point blank, there's no way that it fits with the time frame because it's only like 50 years when it was organized, and then it has to make it over to America and blah 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 blah. And there's this guy that comes up, and I'm sorry, people, but you guys have to look at Wikipedia because, and also MormonWiki.com. So this is straight from the Mormons about Lumen Walters. And he was, quote unquote, a magician and an occultist. And he comes back and he was a doctor from overseas where he would have had a chance in the circles that he roamed because he was upper echelon to have learned this and brought it back. And what do you do with knowledge when you like this kid and you see potential? Yeah, you're going to teach him. And his name is Lumen in the story. And it's weird to me because it's a light bringer, right? Like in
Right.
this story. And it's his real name, which is even more fantastic. But I'm just like, okay, this guy brings this back, I'm pretty sure. Now, I'm not the only person. There are actual scholars that do this rebuttal back and forth on this in multiple books. You guys can look them up for yourself. I'm not going to spoon feed you all the information because it takes all the fun out of the seeking. I'm not, I mean, there's, if you put it in, like you'll find it. But Martinism, Mormonism, boom, you'll find it. Some people say no way. Some people say yes. I very much lean towards a yes on this because
Mhm.
of the parchments. The parchments are very, very interesting. Old North type magic. I didn't send it to myself yet, but one of his parchments that he has called the Jehovah parchment. Again, we get back to Kabbalah and all the names of God and calling out in all these ways and da da da. But we also have angels at the bottom, but they're not angels. They're called intelligences. No, every time I say intelligent, I don't mean every time somebody says intelligent, that's what that means. I mean the way they were using it in this
Mhm.
context at that time. If you study, you'll understand that that means a demon. Okay. And demons are just lower level Elohim. Like there's levels. Like you can't just start talking to the archangel Michael or somebody. You're not going to do that. You've got to figure out the right combinations, and these things lie. They lied to John D. They said, "Oh,
Yes.
we're this and this is what we are." And then they lied and made fun of him and poked him with the sword and made him do all this stupid stuff. And you know what? Angels don't like you. Like I hate to tell you guys if you study,
They don't.
no,
I
Jewish,
tr I try and
Kabbalah,
tell
yeah.
people that all the time. Like, I'm teaching my daughter's 4, and she's always asking me about God and angels and demons, and she asked me a lot about the devil. And she's like, does the devil hate God? And I'm like, no, the devil actually loves God. The devil hates us. He was an
Well,
angel that literally
yes.
wants to steal the dignity of humanity to prove that he and his kin are more worthy of God's love, that whole thing. And because
Well,
it
yeah, you'd be pissed if your little brother came and took all the glory and the name and all the
yeah,
farm. And yeah, that's what it is.
yeah.
That's he's pissed. Yeah. He's
So I
militant.
Yes. So I broke you from your flow. I just wanted to
Oh,
interject that.
you're good.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
good. And so these angels are militant. And one thing, talking to Dr. Sledge, Justin Sledge of Esoterica, he explained to me, like, you don't understand fully. He said, I feel sorry for the Mormons because they don't understand what they're doing, first of all. And second of all, they don't have the full knowledge of all this stuff because, like, they don't really get into the full everything of the Kabbalah. Like you said, it's like these failed Kabbalists. And
Hmm.
what would you do if you were failing? Think of this. And this happens in the early church. If you were failing at something and then some lady walks up and she just happens to have the bloodline of a gift, okay? And I don't mean an irregular gift, one that she probably got really from actual God, which you can test this, renounce it in the name of Jesus Christ and see if it stays. It's yours. Okay, so she actually is a relative of mine, last name Huntington, and she had the most blessings, like patriarchal, put the hands on the head with the anointed oil, the whole Masonic deal that came true and helped people of anybody else. But what does that do to a patriarchy and a Masonic brotherhood where they're like not really supposed to have the girls do stuff? So they took it away. They took it away. And her
Hmm.
name was Xena. So if anybody wants to look her
Wow.
up, there you go. Yeah, and you can figure that out. I mean, his mom's name too. All their names are really sus too. Like we've got
Hmm.
Solomon. His mom's name is, comes from Solomon Mac. That doesn't sound it sounds a
No.
certain kind of way, right? And so I don't care what they say. I think they had certain knowledge. I think they hide their origins, which is stupid because here's the thing. Joseph Smith really tried to make a magical order, which is why Crowley loved him so friggin' much. And I do think he was a magician. He became this Freemason. And here's the thing, he got all the degrees overnight. That doesn't even happen. Okay.
Hmm.
Overnight, like one day he got put in, and the next day he got rose to a master mason. That doesn't happen unless you know some esoteric, hermetic,
Mhm.
all this knowledge, because they don't just do that. Okay. So he knew something, somebody was teaching him. And I truly believe that with all my heart because of this inquisition that I'm telling you about. What do you do if you're the one doing something that you don't want nobody to know about, right? What do they say? Me thinks you protest too much, right?
You point the finger at
Mm,
it's
yes,
you. It's
yes.
you.
It's a girl. It's always a woman, right? And she
Right.
supposedly offended somebody at dinner and said their meat was like not even fit for the dogs. And I think that they just were like, burn this girl down, screw
Hmm.
her. And I think that this happens over and over again, but even more so in Brigham's church. At least Joseph kind of had that whole like, well, nobody wants to talk about this, but with his wife, with the polygamy thing, he was like, Ma, you want to have another husband? Go ahead and do it. Like he practiced polyamory. He was not married to all these women because many of these women were already married. So we get into something else here, and the church doesn't want you to learn about that because by hell, if you start doing that, that's going to get real weird. And I agree. I don't think that's healthy, but if you want to do that, like knock yourself out. Does it come with circumstances? Yeah, I think things get to live through you because here's what we know. The angels fell and they came here and they mated with human women. So these souls that were created at that time with the human women and the angel are not sanctioned souls, right? They are not a real soul. They're artificial in many ways, as are the things that I think they created at the reset with babies and cabbage babies and all this weird crap. And I'm telling you guys, like, people go, well, yeah, they're just a narcissist. No, maybe they're not the same freaking species as you, like, literally. Like, when you talk to someone and they have no actual conscience or like with animals or people or anything they don't, and that was the thing. I've read books that say these cabbage babies did not have a connection with the earth because they weren't from the earth, like they are not the same as us. And I'm like, yeah, there's your answer, people. So yeah, these things wander looking for a place to rest, and it says so in the Bible. That's what it says about
So
demons.
so
Yeah,
you just brought up cabbage babies. We haven't even talked about that yet.
sorry.
Let's tie two things together here because I think there's something very important in the book of Revelations. Because in the book of Revelations, it talks about there being, after the millennial reign of Christ, there will be a little season or short while where the devil is loose to deceive the nations. And then it says, the rest of the dead. This is key component, and this is what makes me think of the Cabbage Patch Kids and these World's Fairs, where you just end up having, incubator baby after
Weird
incubator,
things.
like
Yeah,
all
weird
this type of
stuff.
stuff, and the timing of it is just too good, especially when you consider the Statue of Liberty is actually not who they say it is,
Yeah,
So
I don't think so.
this
Mm-mm.
all gets to the culmination of what I'm talking about with what John D, because to me I see the new Atlantis, I see the
Mhm.
Americas as being
Yes.
the fulfillment. It's a fulfillment of a magical rite, okay? Where the light bringer, it's right there on Ellis Island. Well, it's actually called Liberty Island now. That's a big Mandela effect for me, but
Yeah, that's a weird one for me. Yes.
yeah, but for you and I, like we grew up with it be calling
It was
Ellis
Ellis
Island.
Island. Yeah,
You're right.
forever.
But
Hmm.
now there's a different island where all this happens. But anyway, the Statue of Liberty is, some people say it's Mithras, which ties back to these cults, like maybe even the Martinism cult, like that you were talking about. Like there's this, essentially, this is like, okay, we're going to have the libertine movement, the Universalist libertine movement. We don't care what your vices are. Go for it. Hey,
Bring it. Bring it on. Yeah.
we're all free. Go for it. That's the
Yes.
Americas.
Well,
And
and they tell you in movies this, right? Like a brave new world and
yes,
they're telling you all the day.
so I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, you have these Cabbage Patch Kids, and then you have this biblical thing where I'm personally of the like, if I'm to look at the Bible as an actual storyline, like a historical book, as my friend Dave Murphy calls the Old Testament, he calls it the Book of Remembrance. The if I am to look at it as a history text, and the John the Revelator, he writes, okay, there will be a time after the millennial reign of Christ where the rest of the dead will essentially incarnate. That makes sense. That's right in the cut, in the fold of these incubator babies, these Cabbage Patch Kids. Can you give people little historical context of what this actually was, like when the Cabbage
Sure.
Patch Kids came about, like when the incubator babies happened, like the whole deal?
So they came about with the World's Fair. I think I grabbed that. Yes, the Orphan Trains are from 1854 to 1929, and the Cabbage Babies start around 1933 and Foundlings. So they're two separate things, both very strange. Charles Loring Brace is over the Orphan Trains, and he is a Freemason. He's also a preacher. I find that super interesting. But what's the best thing of all? He's an, I'm gonna help everyone guy. And what do
Hmm.
we see this happening all the time now, right? Like, oh, let
Right.
me help you with that. Like, of course they want to do that. So he starts this orphan train because there is all these kids with no parents. Now people say, well, Heidi, the prostitution was out of hand and
No.
everybody, no, this is what I get. And everybody's parents were locked in asylums. Well, that part I will say. Um,
Yes.
and and they were, everybody died. Okay, let me explain something first. The people that die first any single time in all of history, when the plague comes or the flu comes or pneumonia comes, is kids. Babies and
Right.
children die
Sure.
first because their immune systems are not fully developed and they have a higher risk. And I'm telling you guys, as a nurse for 25 years, of dehydration, and they will die first, period, dot. So that is like a normal thing. Like everybody knows this. And so all of a sudden everybody wants me to believe that there's just so many kids and no people, and this is the why, because everybody died on boats. Okay, well then you get these mail order babies and all this weird shit is happening at the same time, and I'm like, listen, if you have 250,000 children running around and you don't know what to do with them, to the point where you're putting them on a train and sending them away, why are you saving a whole bunch of preemies at the same time where natural
No.
selection would just take care of that problem for you, right? Like
Right.
that's, I mean, it's sad. I'm not being crass. I'm just saying that that was kind of like a known thing back in the day. Like, oh, if it came too early, probably is not going to make it.
Hmm.
So this doctor pops up, okay, Dr. Cooney Martin Cooney, and he's on Coney Island. I mean, let's be real. He's this guy that's a doctor, but he's not really a doctor. He allegedly apprenticed under a French obstetrician, but he has no medical license, and they can't find this guy that he supposedly worked under. So, okay. And this is right after Dr. Tarnier, who is a real doctor in 1881, starts understanding things with something called the Embryo Project. Okay. And so you're talking about so long ago that this guy knew stuff in this embryo project and how to save babies and incubators and chickens being hatched too early, stuff like that. So he's like, hey, what if we just put a baby in this chicken incubator? I mean, that's smart, cool, like free thinker, good idea. But this Cooney guy just pops up and he's got all these babies everywhere, and they're tiny, tiny, little weird looking babies. Like I know preemies don't always look normal. I've taken care of my share, but these kids don't look quite right. And it's weird. Parents don't come back. Like as the mother, I can tell you, okay, maybe 1 in 20 moms would be like, peace out, I got stuff to do, like screw this kid, I'm gonna go do my thing. Most women would not be that. Most people
Right.
want their baby back. Like, what are you doing? Like, why? No, don't take my baby. Like, even if you don't have money, I mean, you still, like, you see this time and time again, like people giving their whole life, like literally for their children. So I have a hard time really accepting that there's just all these children that nobody wanted. And then somehow, they just save them because, we don't know what to do with any babies and kids, but save all these ones too. And they're giving them away at these World's Fairs. It's like super weird. And then you see movies and they're telling you this. You see the farm boy in the movie, what is it? Princess Bride, right? Where'd the farm boy come from? Where's the farm parents? Like everybody had these kids and they worked on farms. And then at 18, they give them a little bit of money and they send them on their way and they come and breed with the population. And now, in 19, what is it? 40, I think it's 47. I don't have my paper right here. I'll find it. We get the RH factor, right? And it never, ever happens again, ever in our
What do you
lives.
mean? What do you mean it never happens again?
So we never have another change in actual blood typing again. The RH factor happened, and I want to say, I'm going to find it because it's right here somewhere. Okay, so it's discovered in 1940, and it never happens again. Like if you're going to say this is evolution, we should have like 200 blood types by now, right? Like we should have AB negative, negative, positive. Like we should have all kinds of combinations if this is going to be about that, but we don't. We only have this RH factor, and my grandma had it. And a lot of times when you're looking at this, like it gets weird because you get into different genetic transmitters and genetic, like the VMAT2 and all this weird stuff. And again, about Atlantis and like the Nephilim genetics, like EM81 is supposedly Nephilim, EZ827 Atlantis. And these are in books. Like this is all genetic study weirdo stuff that they're postulating this, right? They can't really be sure, but this is what they're saying they think, right? And this RH blood doesn't mix with regular people. So you've got all of a sudden you have to get a marriage license. What do you have to do? You have to take a blood test. Well, that's weird. Why would you need to do that all of a sudden? They never did that before,
Can I give you a little hint?
Mm-hmm.
This might just be like just straight up just be having a little bit of common sense and covering your bases. My longest held career is as essentially a rolfer, a deep tissue myofascial release expert. So I've had, a few thousand people come through these hands, and a bunch of my clients, very long held clients, were RH negative. Oddly enough, all of them women. Most of my clients, I would say 65 to 70% of my clients are women. The RH negative ones are hyper promiscuous.
So you're like, oh boy, I get it. Yeah.
No. When I tell you it's not even something, because I'm very sensitive to energetics and I can feel when there's intent. And then I can understand energetics, like when the body just relaxes for the first time.
Right.
When the body will relax for the first time, and then that feeling of safety comes in, and then the being will misinterpret that as like a signal for procreation. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the RH negative. I won't say all.
It's intense. Right.
It's like, oh, it's on now. Like without any thought about there being a consequence.
Right.
Like there's not a measuring of consequence. And it's now this is the second aspect I notice in my RH negative clients. They all have children because the more you shoot, the more you score.
Yes.
And with that, almost all of them don't have, like, they love their kids, but it's not like a warm love. It's not like it's a different type of
it's like a very this is my creation. This is
exactly. It's much more of like a narcissistic, like this is an extension of me. Like this is an extension of me. So when they're talking about their kids, it's always their kids as like a little mini me.
Yes. Yeah. And even if you have that, even if you do have that, because I used to do that so bad with my oldest daughter because I was so proud of everything she did. Yes. And I was always like, oh, she amazes me. But like, it's not the same as what my grandma did, who was RH negative, to my mom. And actually it got weird because she started being weirdly jealous of my mom. Like instead of
Right.
being like, I'm so happy that you're like me, or I'm so excited to see you. It's your time now. You're the winner, like it's your game now because you're young, like this is cool. And like, no, that it's not that. It's not
And
that.
check out this third thing that I can never say all, that most of them
Yes.
that I've come in contact with share. They all have an extra bone in their sacrum. They all have a
Oh,
tail.
that's weird. Oh, that's awkward. Huh. That's
Yeah.
strange.
Yeah, they
Weird.
literally, instead of 33, they have 34.
Huh.
Like the tail, there's always a prominence on the bottom of the sacrum, which
I will
is
tell you, I have been curious about this that you're talking about because this is in my own family. I don't know about the tail part, but I know it can happen medically. I know that's real. Um, I've I've watched the dynamic of the women, only the women in my family with this. Okay, and you're right. It's like the one has one that's not, and then they don't understand each other, and then they'll have one that is RH negative and they'll get along, and then it'll happen again, and it's really weird. It's like this weird dynamic of like almost where like they pit against each other, and this
mhm.
is happening between me and my daughter still. Like I'm not pitting against anything because I refuse to play, but I just removed myself from the game, and I'm like, I'm here when you want to talk. Like I don't know what else to do, because I don't like this. And so, but I will tell you, I have noticed this weird competition thing. It's like almost even with the dads. Like this happened to my mom. Like, and it was horrid because she said it was like my mom hated me because my dad loved me.
Right.
And I'm like, dang, and then you get these different people all in one family. And I have to tell you, like in Utah, there is a lot of RH negative. There are a lot of redheads. This goes back to
Mhm.
what we're eventually anyways going to get to is this 13th line, right? This tribe that they say is the line of Satan. And I don't say this, okay? This is not me. This is like an Illuminati weird thing. Like, get Fritz Springmeier's book, read all about it. Like, you want to read it, go read it. But the information in there is interesting. I never am sold fully on anything, but like, I take it in and I'm like, well, that's weird. And then, it says what? It says the 13th line, this line of Satan is Joseph Smith's bloodline. And when I seen that, I was like, what the hell? Like, this cannot be true. Like, 90% of the information I learn is because I hear something so ridiculous that I'm like, ha, that's bullshit. Like, I'm going to find this and burn it to the ground. And no, I couldn't. I can't disprove it. I can't actually prove it, but I can say this is referenced often and including people to this day. There is a sect of polygamy here in, well, probably more than Utah, but at least here. And they believe that they are still the bloodline of Jesus Christ himself, Merovingian. I am talking Merovingian bloodline of Jesus Christ is what they say. But what also do they say? They are Satan and Jesus are brothers in the Mormon theology. And I do think the Mormons, Jesus is not who we think it is. Okay. This is postulation there. But I wonder often, okay, is this a different angel? Like, is this something else? Because they call it Heavenly Father. And what does the Bible say? You'll call no one father but
No
me,
man, father.
right?
Mhm.
Mm-mm. And so I'm like, why would they blow that up? That is the number one thing they call God, but also they call God Elohim. Well, that's a
Right.
title. Yeah.
It
And
is.
if you start to understand that, and then you get in Mother of Heaven, and everybody wants to persecute me because I said it, but it's not my theology. That is the word spoken. And when you get into this weird bloodline, like I'm telling you about, these people actually still to this day marry their sisters because they want to keep their bloodline pure. Like their sisters, cousins, brothers, uncles, they keep it in the family, period. And
Now,
so
is this the Merovingian line, or is this the seed of Satan line? Like, which one is it?
it's the same because what is Satan? It's Jesus's brother. So this
Now
is how.
you have to inform me on this one. I don't know this. I don't know this about like what level of Mormon do you have to be before that gravy gets spilled on the table?
Ve- Very little. Actually, they will tell you now, not the Merovingian part, but they will tell you immediately that Satan is our brother. And there's a silly cartoon about it, and it's on my Instagram if people want to go see it. But this, they say, when both Jesus and Satan came to God about mortals, okay, Satan wanted to force his will on us and make us be good, and Jesus was like, "Yo, let's just be the hippie brother. What? Like, why don't we let him choose and then we'll redeem him? Like, why? Why do you want to force it?" And so God chose Jesus's way and Satan got pissed. And that was what led to the war of heaven and da 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 da. So that is their theology. And they'll tell you that part. They'll also tell you, yes, we call him Heavenly Father. They'll refer him as Heavenly Father. They don't love if you start talking Elohim because that's like a temple term. That is a little bit higher up. They don't talk about Mother in Heaven. And if you reference Mother in Heaven, they're like, yeah, she exists. We don't know. That's what they say. And it's like this funny, like, yep, okay, like don't talk about it, right?
Hmm.
But yet, when you get to the top, this is interesting. When you and it will go back to Zena Huntington. When you get to the top of the top, and often I've said, I do believe they are worshiping something he saw. I don't not believe him. That's not it. I actually do believe him. That's the problem is I think that he saw something, and I think this something definitely is an entity from another area, i.e., Elohim, okay, from another realm. We can say that in general,
Hmm.
a generalization. It can mean a demon, it can mean an angel. We don't know. I do know this. He's a dead guy. Dead guys aren't typically angels. I mean, as far as I know, for sure, Jesus Christ didn't come back yet and people haven't been resurrected. So I don't know how that would work back then, but I don't know. Maybe so, like we've talked about, whatever. I think that this thing lied to him. He said he once lived upon the earth as a Native American and he died and he was a fierce warrior. And, he came to, this is Moroni, talk to Joseph Smith. And so I don't think he just showed up. I think Joseph was practicing calling things down. And I think he got an answer just like John D did. Knock, knock,
Hmm.
who's there? Some of his drawings, those parchments, especially he's got one that's like a spiral and in the middle of the spiral. And if you've looked up the Nazi stuff with that, there's that's summoning, there's summoning stuff. What I was talking about, the names of
Hmm.
God, all the names of God. And they knew this stuff, and then he's got a Sibley witchcraft seal in the middle for Solomonic magic. Again, back to Martinism. They practice Solomonic magic. That's literally what they say. And they
Hmm.
are here to this day. They do. They say that. In fact, I think it was Ike Baker that said he was a Martinist, if I remember correctly. Somebody just barely went on the big show and said that. So I'm not going to reference which show because yeah.
I get it.
Anyways, yeah. So one of them said that, and usually it's kind of secretive, but it's still to this day a thing, and I truly believe that what they worship, because at that top level, everything's patriarchal,
Hmm.
everything. And then at the tippy top, when you get the second anointing, which means you're making your place sure in heaven, that means no matter what you do, short of murdering an innocent, not a non-innocent, an innocent blood, that is the only thing that could take your place from being like literally with God in heaven at the top. And the way you get that blessing is a woman, your wife, does that blessing, and it used to be in your bedroom. And this will make a lot of sense to people that study the occult. And she lays hands on his head and seals this blessing.
Yeah.
That is never done ever. And if you start looking into Isis worship and different things, like you'll fully comprehend what we're talking about here. And I'm not going to degrade somebody that does worship that, etc. But I'm telling you, there are people in this world that already know about this stuff and it doesn't fit with Christianity. That's all. Like, I'm not, you
It,
know,
that
dogging them.
harkens all the way back to the Hetaira of the Greek. The Hetaira were what they called the uh, the sacred prostitutes that would anoint the men. It just sounds like there's so much, like sexual deviation and denigration, and everybody's trying to, like, one way or another justify their actions as being something that they're not. It's just like, it's just an
Well, because
absurd.
they can't hide. If they put that on blast, right? And we get back to that, what happens every single time? They kill them all. They're
Mhm.
heretics. So they can't do that.
So also there's a thing too that I've noticed is, like, I've studied a lot of physics in my life, as specifically scalar physics and sympathetic vibratory physics. And in those schools of thought, frequency is location and location is frequency. So say you're Joseph Smith and you're in an area, and was it his father that was the fortune hunter?
He was a treasure digger and a he did do divining rods. And just so you know
Yes.
where they were at that time, right near the Susquehanna River. Just so you know.
Okay,
Continue
so
forward.
yeah, I'm a huge fan of Michael Wan's work, Ross Ben's
Yes.
work with the Susquehanna River. Big shout out to those guys.
Yes.
In fact, my one of my dowsing mentors who lives off the Susquehanna River. I do lots of dowsing for all the things I build. So if his father was into dowsing, then his father
Yes.
knew about ley lines and dragon paths. Getting back to frequency as location, I'm sure Joseph Smith had some of this, taught to him. He finds where there would be a nodal point. And sometimes you get these nodal points that have they are a portal, right? And let's
Yes.
say, well, the thing about portals is whatever capacitance you have in yourself is what you actually bring through. So unless you've done, like, tremendous amount of clearing of your body, and you've, like, gotten rid of the majority of your vices, and you're
Hmm.
intentionally living a virtuous life, you're going to have some pretty dark things come through. You're
Even
always,
occultists do this.
yes,
They purge themselves. Crowley had to pre-prepare for the Abermillin. I think they said like 13, 14 months, something like that. It was long. It was an
it's
extra
no
long time.
it's no joke, because reality is programmable. And what I mean by that is, you are always being shown a mirror, right? So you go to a portal site, or another way of saying it, to put this in a term that is to people that don't know anything about the occultism, to the standard Christian, they tell you have to kind of prepare yourself to be in the presence of God, because the presence of God, if you have all these impure thoughts, if you have a heavy heart because you've been shitty to people, all these different things, you're going to be obliterated by the love that's there. Love
Hmm.
is so
Yes.
powerful, it will disintegrate you, right? So you have to prepare any magical any spiritual rite. You're fasting, you're limiting the intake of, anything that would build a vice, anything that would build an idol here.
Hmm.
So
Yes.
you're a person that goes to and finds these portals, and then you're like, to sell what you've come across, you start to aggrandize things. Well, guess what? Once you start to aggrandize things in that realm, guess what you're attracting more of, right?
Well, and he's calling down for it. Like he's literally has a Mars dagger and a Jupiter talisman, and he's calling down for Venus, which isn't always a good thing. Like you might want to check into that, like before you start using these things. Like he's doing all this weird stuff that none of it is inherently overtly positive. This isn't like and people say, well, he cried out for Jesus and he didn't pass out. Okay, first of all, I will take it back. He was overcome by darkness. That's what it said. But also there's 4 accounts of the first vision. And we're talking about a 14-year-old boy. So do you think that at that time or any time after that, this kid he's a kid. And do you really think he's prepared or able to even handle that at that time if it was really like he says it was? I don't,
So with this, like I live in Missouri. In Missouri, I think you were allowed to shoot Mormons up until like 1980. Like there, you wouldn't have been prosecuted. Like like in this state, like the Mormons were like being chased out, even though the Mormons said, especially like northern Missouri was like the
Jackson
Holy
County,
Land.
the Eden. Yes, Jackson County, Missouri.
Now it's kind of interesting though, because I live in the Ozarks. I live in the South, closer to Arkansas. And when it comes to like the amount of food density that we have here relative to the square foot, it's the highest in the world. Like
Wow.
everything grows here. There's every animal that you could ever want to hunt and eat is here. So it's one of the reasons why my family chose it here. And my first permaculture teacher, it was so funny. We were all like these leftist, like hippies in the jungle. And I took my first PDC course with this guy, and we're like, "What are you up to next?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm going to go build the Ark for the CIA." And we were
Yeah,
like,
I know that one.
and we're like, what? And he's like, "Yeah, we're the Ark project." And I'm, I wasn't too hip to a lot of conspiracies at the time. And we were like, what's the Ark project? And he explained how like this area of the world, just you can pretty much grow anything, you can hunt anything, and they're pretty much building an ark for the big conversion that might happen. I think a lot of that they're just trying to give people something to do and keep people on the dole. But at that time, that was like kind of perplexing to me. And then hearing how the Mormons were talking about so many of the lost tribes of the native, like some of the, how should I say it, the lost tribes of Israel,
Israel. Yes.
Israel,
Yes.
um, had made their way over to the Americas. Give us a little chronology of like the Smith family was up in the Northeast, and then they're moving westward bound. We know St. Louis, Missouri is like, they call it the Ark. I
Hmm.
call it the Royal Arch
The
Freemasonry.
royal portal. Yeah.
It's the Royal Arch Freemasonry to the nth degree, with the Mississippi River right there and the Missouri River. It
Yep.
in all the massive mounds that they found there. More than likely, from my mind's eye, Joseph Smith did come across a Native American spirit that was probably a shaman, and that shaman, a lot of the shamans had cursed this, like the land, because it was being taken from them.
Hmm.
They actually cursed the settlers that were coming onto the land. I don't know. I never had heard that he had actually thought that what was that spirit called that he
So
thought was a Native American?
Moroni, and it's on top of every temple that there is in all
Moroni.
well, they're starting to change it now, but he was a Native American that turned white after he died. He's exceedingly fair after he died. But I will tell you this, it's weird because, he's very into treasure digging, and look at the people that dig. He was by a hill Cumorah. I think probably there was a burial ground there, possibly. It's not a big hill. It's not. And he's digging in Hill Cumorah, where the Native American says to dig for this stuff, and he meets a familiar spirit. He gets punched by a toad. Like, all this stuff sounds absolutely stupid, and unless you understand things, right? They talk about people living on the moon, people living on the sun. Okay, that sounds ridiculous until you start studying some things, right? If you start studying Rosicrucianism, you go, ha ha, oh, okay, got it. And then you go, oh, well, these people knew stuff, and
Hmm.
yet they're saying, oh, he couldn't even write in English. Okay, but he's studying Hebrew with this, Jewish guy. That's part of the story. But all of this lost DNA and these lost tribes, there was a guy, I can't remember his name, but I'm gonna just tell you the story. He went on a DNA project when DNA got hot, and he's like, I'm gonna prove that this is real and these are the lost tribes, because the Native Americans, the Eskimos, the who else? Native Americans, Eskimos, Pacific Islanders, all those people are supposed to be Lamanites, i.e., Native Americans, this lost tribe. And he starts doing DNA studies on it. He's this biologist that's like all hot and heavy for the Lord, for Mormons. And he is shut down and almost excommunicated by the church. He's like, they're like, you just better cut it out, shut up now, because it didn't work out for him. And this guy left the church over it because he could not find anything that didn't say they weren't of Asiatic descent, which we know now. I mean, that like this is how it is, this is the Native American tribes go back most of the time to Asia. And so they're like, well, if you start proving this, like this is going to be this huge problem. Well, then you start seeing all of this stuff being owned. And it was before partially owned, and actually started in Howard Hughes's time for the DNA computerization right after Germany, which the Mormons were completely involved in getting the records from IBM. And they actually petitioned, and I have the document. I need to put that where I can get to it faster, but where they said, can we get those cards that you put everybody's ancestry on, right? Before they exterminated them. And so IBM was like, we'll see. And then they take it to the CIA and actually ask for this as a FOIA doc, and they get them, and they start computerizing all of the DNA stuff that they do have, and genealogy, tons of that. And so at that time, they were doing it under the Howard Hughes Tool Corporation, which was weird. And then Howard Hughes had one lucid moment, and he's like, what the hell is this? What the hell is this company? Dumb Mormon guy, CIA guy. And he's like, shut it down. And he goes, this is a quote from Howard Hughes. You shut it down. He is just doing that. He being gay, his last name is Gay. He is just doing that to computerize all the genealogy of the church. And he wasn't wrong. And that man took over a big portion of Howard Hughes's wealth through Howard Hughes's Medical Institute, which is very into CRISPR and all kinds of stuff you guys don't even want to know. It's like bananas. Go look at Howard Hughes Medical. He was over it till the day he died. And so I'm telling you guys, when you hold all the keys, yeah, DNA is going to be like obfuscated. Like they just probably, if they find anything, they're like, look at what he had. Nope, get rid of that. Put somewhere else. Put Ireland.
Hmm.
They're not going to start saying Atlantean or like these lost tribes or whatever. They're just not going to let that out. And the keepers of that are all in the CIA. Like the CIA Mormon Connect. If they're not in it, they're associated with it. They work together. The Mormons are very New World Order. This has nothing to do with Joseph. This gets into Brigham Young. Brigham Young family was very occultic also. Even the name Brigham is very odd for that time, and people can search into that. It's a different thing. And that those two families had a lot of problems like after Joseph died, like the brothers fighting with other people. They're all fighting against each other. And a lot of weird stuff starts to happen after Joseph. But even he's saying things towards the end of his life when he's running for president. I can hold the church together. I've held this church together like no man could, not even Jesus Christ himself. I'm sorry. What did you say, Christian guy? Like that doesn't sound Christian, And I think at some point he started letting too many secrets out of the box, because he delivered this sermon called the Follett Sermon. You need to look that up. And when he delivers this sermon, it has like a lot of Kabbalistic, things that he probably shouldn't be saying. on running for office or to big crowds of people. And I think that's what got him killed. You know, that between that and the women thing, letting the women be Masons, like it was enough. You know, they were just done with him. And I think that, you know, he was trying to do something very, I'll say spiritual. Okay. I think he thought exactly what he says he thought. I think that what he says is true in his mind. Do I think he was a great deliverer, though, of that? Like a really dynamic orator? Yeah, I do. Do I think that he was, you know, charming and all these things? People said so. People talked about this. And you know, this is why Crowley loved him so much. He just adored him, and Crowley didn't like Christians, so it doesn't fit. And I just look at all of it and go, okay, because like recognizes like, right?
Can I ask you a question real
Hermetic.
quick?
Yeah.
Yeah, so because I know Gnostic Christians, right, that will look at the Bible and study the Bible, and they look at it as metaphor. So when you say like they were, you know, in the Mormon church, they'll say that, you know, Satan and Jesus are brothers. The way the Gnostic Christian would look at that is like, of course, you know, you can't know light without dark. Like you can't have, you know, good without bad. There's always a duality at
Yeah.
play, right? And so is do you think there's a chance that the metaphoric that the top Mormon brass we're looking at these things much more metaphorical, like a Gnostic Christian or a mystical Christian would, and then the people underneath that are trying to anthropomorphize everything and make it into like something solid when it was never meant to be that. It was more meant to be like this is just how like the birds and the bees work. Is there any
No.
chance of that?
No, because they actually, so all of their doctrine that they support, and they only believe the Bible in as this is their actual quote, in as much as it's translated correctly. And if the Book of Mormon disagrees with something in the Bible, the Book of Mormon trumps. And so if they ever have a problem with something, you know, they'll tell you like, oh, well, this is the Joseph Smith's translation of this or whatever, whatever. But they actually believe certain things because, and I'll give you an example. The fall, okay, when the angels in heaven are having their war and the people had to choose sides because they believed in a pre-existence. They believed that we all lived there before we were born as spirit people, and then we get born into the earth, you know, later, which is why we're supposed to all have as many kids as we can have to bring down the spirit babies. Okay, so we're all up there chilling in heaven with God and everything, and we're part of this war. And the people that did not choose sides, that went, we don't know what to do, they're called fence sitters in heaven. Okay. But the fence sitters, this is why I know they take it literally, were black cursed with a black skin, not the Native Americans. That's a different thing. And they believe that these people literally could not hold the priesthood. And this is why I know they believe it literally. They kept them from holding the highest degrees of their church's priesthood to get to the highest glory. And they could only go there as a servant to the white person until 1978. So not Asians, not Native American, just specifically black people. Okay. And so I know that they take all this literally because their doctrine tells me so. So,
What do you think the long game is from their perspective with, because we started this whole conversation really talking about blood and talking
yes.
about the genes and the DNA. Let's just call it heredity, because if that's a more accurate way of saying it. They hold the keys to the hereditary lineages per se. What do you think that they're actually looking for? Are they, do you think they're looking for something from the past, or do you think that they're trying to create something for the future? Like, what's the
Both.
point?
I think they are looking for through the past. I do think 2020 had a lot to do with it. The church really pushed 2020 that everyone, if you were a good LDS person, man, woman, or child, despite if you had any interactions, needed to go get that cure immediately, period, dot. And they pushed it. They pushed it so hard that people left the church. Some people left the church over it, and they didn't give a shit. They did not care. And I also feel like the blow up of the DNA tests were highly suspect and very entangled with the church. And this is why people say, well, that's just Ancestry and Me, and that's just 23andMe or whatever. They don't own those companies. No, you're right. They don't, but they own the mainframe. They own every single piece of information that's ever entered into that frame. So you do not get to any of those sites without FamilySearch.org, which was created, like I said, clear back in Howard Hughes's time. And so we're talking about, very different paths. When we get into when Joseph goes, I think there was a restoration of the church. The church, you had to be rebaptized. There was a reformation. They did all this stuff and under Brigham Young, and Brigham Young's church is not Joseph Smith's church. And under Brigham Young is when we start to see these people come through that are very left-hand path and they're bankers. They're playing with the NWO. They're supporting the wrong side of the war in WW2. They're providing aid to not the victors. They are helping, Werner von Braun ends up in one of their theological films at this time. They're close with Disney, like all this weird stuff. Like they're very in the know, and then they become very interested in space, and like they're very intertangled in space, all this stuff. So I think at this point, the very top echelon became keepers of something. And I'm going to tell you guys some things that has happened with the church. So in 2018, they finally were able to build a temple in right down the street from the Vatican. And there's this weird picture of the prophet holding the key of St. Peter. And he's holding it in a Masonic grip. It's very odd. And they've never, ever let him do that before. Well, then I had a person, shout out Jeremy, write into me and he said, did you know about this? And he sent me something else the other day. They bought Westminster Abbey. Did you know this? I did not know this. I had no idea this was real, and I thought it was BS. I looked it up. It's true. And I think, let me double check because I don't want to misquote if this is a funny quote. Okay, hold on. Westminster Abbey purchase LDS comes right up. And for $3.14 billion, April 1st, 2024. So I'm just saying that these Mormons have skated underneath the radar because they're the nicest people ever. Don't you know, Heidi? You're criticizing the nicest people ever. They're so nice. Okay. So I think they have something, and I'm pretty sure it came through Howard Hughes. I'm like 89% sure that either they had a piece of the puzzle and Howard Hughes had a piece of the puzzle when he died. I know they had Howard Hughes because they took him. James O. Golden took him, and he was a Mormon CIA operative. And so, Eugene Caesar, who helped assassinate RFK, was also working for the Mormon Church, but not only the Mormon Church, but Skunk Works. Like all these things always scream back to Mormon. And I'm like, how are they so under the radar when they're literally at every scene of the crime? Like that doesn't make they're involved in Watergate through Bob Bennett. They're involved in all this weird stuff. And nobody ever looks at them because they do this thing. Okay. And you will understand it better than anybody because you read the room, right? They teach them how to talk in a hypnotic voice. They teach them how to look and present as a non-aggressive man. And when you meet a Mormon man, you won't be like, wow, that screams football player or like outdoorsman or hunter guy, but they are. But that isn't how they'll present in the upper echelon of the church. It's very docile, kind, meek. They're anything but that. Okay. Oh, you're muted. Sorry.
Have you ever seen the movie Arlington Road with Jeff Bridges?
I have not. Should I watch this? I'll watch it.
Check out the movie for multiple reasons. The most basic level of it was pre-programming everybody for terrorism. I think it came out in like 1999 or something like that. But when you bring up like the nice guy act of the Mormon, within 10 minutes of you watching this movie, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about because
I'll check it out.
there's essentially these fanatics that come across as like prim and proper and pristine with large families and large social networks, and everybody's a professional. But
Yes.
on the back end of it, there's like a very, very big, long end game thing that they're working on.
Yes, because here's the thing. You asked me about why they moved out west. Okay. Like you said, people were chasing them with guns and, Joseph Smith got tarred and feathered and everything. And yeah, he was messing around with everybody's wives. So, I mean, I see it. Plus, he's kind of blasphemous. He's talking about he's holding stuff together better than Jesus. And, I get that part of it. But then when they get here, okay, you're running for your life. You're running to Utah and you're now Brigham Young, and he's very stern. He's a different prophet. He's not like Joseph. He's not fanciful and free. He's very stiff. Like, think of like, he's very,
Yeah.
very, yeah, brash and stiff and kind of, different prophet. And the first thing he does when he gets here, remember, he's running for his life. And this is Mexico at the time. Like, this isn't part of America at the time. This is called the Beehive State. You need to look into the bees with these people because they know some shit from Egypt. I promise you they do. And so they become the state of industry, and it's everywhere. It's on our state flag. It's everywhere. Well, the first thing he does is he tells the government who he's running from, who he doesn't want anything to do with, where he is, and says, "Hey, do you need us to finish the railroad for you for free?" Well, sure, by golly. And they're all super good friends with the presidents. And if you look back at every prophet, they've got these weird relationships with the presidents, and unless it's not a good one, like the Kennedys, who they helped get rid of. But, you see these things and they're products, right? It's like all about industry. Then the next thing they did after they helped build the railroad was they said, oh, we need to build this sugar company. And they're one of the pioneers of beet sugar, which is terrible for you. Terrible for you. And how are they going to ship it anywhere without a railroad? So they start getting smart, and they are using the Mormon people, like my grandparents, poor people, and they're using their actual backs and labor and money to do this. This is what they're doing. If you can't afford to pay, then you can go work. If you can't, they literally said, we don't care if it breaks the church. This is a quote from the prophet of that day. We will finish this sugar company. That doesn't seem very Christian-y, whatever. That seems very industrious, with the Beehive State. And so I think it's interesting that I think that the very tip top at that point, the next president up, George A. Smith, he did a Masonic salute, and he said, "I'm going to play ball," and he ends up on Time magazine. And that's very odd as a weird Mormon guy. Like, what the hell did they want with these weirdo Mormons? Like, everybody's trying to kill him all the time. Like, all of a sudden he's on a magazine. Well, he's one of the first ones that ends up in a secret society, and he's part of the Rotary Club. Well, wait a minute. The Rotary Club doesn't usually have Mormon. Like, that's a Catholic thing, right? No. The Mormons are very involved in the Rotary Club. The Mormons are very involved in supporting with IBM. The Mormons are very involved with Bill Gates, very involved with Bill Gates. They are, transhumanist type pushers, all these different things. So all these weird ideas do not jive with their core curriculum. And then you talk about blood. We were one of the last states, and I'm not certain, I have to look at if it actually was discontinued, that would allow to be shot for a capital punishment, okay, to spill the blood because of blood atonement. The Mormons were known to spill blood for blood atonement, and no different than these wars and that with the pioneers that they made this whole show about primeval, right now. Where they dressed up as Native Americans and basically extinguished this whole party, the Baker Fancher Party, who had a lot of money and cattle, and nobody talks about that with them. But also the Boston Tea Party, same freaking thing. So you're looking at this whole picture, and that they're Masons, and that now they're more accepted, and they stop doing polygamy. This is where the church shatters. And the people that hold true to like Joseph's teachings, they go one way and break off into their sects, like polygamy and RLDS. And there's like so many. But then you've got mainstream who become very staunch white shirt, suit and tie, sing song voice, CIA, like weird. It gets weird. And bankers. And George A. Smith was the first banker. And then what happens? Yale comes out here and sets up a branch of Skull and Bones at the University of Utah. The Yale members of Skull and Bones did that. Not sanctioned per se, but this was literally set up by their members. So you can't tell me that there's not something there. These are very left-hand path driven people, period, at the top at this point. Before, I don't know. I kind of feel like he was more mystical. And I'm not saying that the things he said were great or anything like that, because I don't think it's good to mock. And I don't even know if he knew. Like, if you knew that from such a young age and you believed it all to be true and something lied to you, just like John Dee. John Dee gave up his whole life for this, like he literally gave up his wife. He gave up everything he had to these angels. And I feel the same is true with Joseph. And sometimes I feel bad for him, because I'm like, man, maybe it was just, the circumstance, or how he was raised up with this magical kind of thinking, with his grandpa and dad and all these people, and he's following in their footsteps, and he really has this moment where he thinks this is, his thing. And just like John Dee, by the time they knew, it was too late. Everything was done. The work was done. And once the work is done, that's their ultimate goal. Like, they didn't care about John Dee's well-being. They asked multiple times, like, can you give us money to help us do this? No, write this shit down and shut up, you stinky person. Like, they were so mean to them, And if you study that, it all fits together. And I do think the Mormons have something over the Catholics, over, like, look, they're buying up things that are very prominent. Westminster Abbey, like building down the street from the Vatican. Years ago, 20 years ago, they'd have laughed in your face if you said that was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But they have something, and I think they played their card. And they keep talking about the key, the key, the key, the key. And I've postulated that I think it's, possible that it's a bloodline, or that they know, I don't know. They're so involved in DNA. I mean, it's weird.
Well, I was bringing this up to you off air about the Bigelsen Academy, the Bigelsen brothers, who were the sons of Harvey Bigelsen, that he pretty much was doing this very specific blood work where he could see holographic messages in people's blood. And so there's a bunch of different doctors out there that I've interviewed, including the Bigelsen brothers, and also their chief scientists, or their chief microbiologists. And there's a lot of, let's just say it's a lot like the whole virus thing. There's a lot in it's hard for me to say the word.
Virology. Yes.
Virology. That science it's a quasi pseudoscience.
Yes.
Because like most of what they're saying is a virus is artifacts of the actual experiment. Well, they're finding the same thing is true with DNA. Like the double helix that we've all been, told about, that's also an artifact of the actual experiment trying to find it. So that doesn't negate the fact that we do have breeding. Like
Right.
any horticulturist, any, cattleman, anybody that deals with propagating life, you deal with heredity. And the Bigelsen information to me is really incredible, because what they're showing in their blood work is that the blood, you could have one drop of blood from somebody from eons ago. Or let's just talk about somebody who's
Like
alive.
Edgar Casey, right? Like the Casey stuff. Like he could know things from hardly anything. Yeah.
Well, here's the craziest thing. So the blood it's non-temporal. Like if let's say somebody takes blood from you today, right? And let's say you go to the ER because you broke a leg and you need somebody to reset it. And you tell them you're a certain blood type, and they go ahead and take some of your blood. more than likely, if the Bigglesons were to look at your blood, they would show the broken bone, like in the blood. With the way they look at it, there would be a holographic picture of the broken bone, which is amazing.
Yeah.
But the nuttiest thing is, in a year, if they were to look at that same blood, that bone would be fixed if it was fixed. So the blood is always giving information in real time of what's going on for the person.
Right.
And I bet you and I are the same ilk, where we're not all the same. There could be Cabbage Patch babies that who knows what DNA, what genetic line that is. I know if the Nephilim thing is true, I know I have a part of that running through my brain, through me, because my dad had all the characteristics of what they call Nephilim. He had 2 extra rows of teeth. He had like retard strength. He was like as an adult, he was like a Sasquatch. Like, he was a very hairy man. Like, he had all these things. He had incredibly piercing eyes. Like, there's all these things that they call the Edomites, or the red ones, all that. Like, if that is a real thing, that runs through me. So, and then my family had lots of military background and stuff like that. I'm a big believer that there's something called epigenetics, where if God can come to anybody and anything, and if you consciously are choosing virtue over vice, you're choosing the light of the creator and not any of these lower demigods,
right?
That epigenetically changes you. Like, and I've seen this not only in myself, I've seen this in so many other people too, where they just make a couple, usually trauma hits them, and then they make a huge change, some for the better, some for the worse. If it's for the better, they genetically upregulate. If it's for the worse, they genetically downregulate.
Yes.
And what's nuts, though, is it's shown in the blood. So when you're talking about how the Mormons are sitting there, and when I say Mormons, we're being specific.
Yeah.
We're talking about upper echelon. Yeah. So they're sitting there, and they're essentially, they're databasing and compiling all this information. What I want to know is what they think that information is actually good for.
They
Like,
won't
what?
tell. They're not good. I'm just a goyim, and so is every person. They have the quorum of the 12, and they have the quorum of the 70, and then they have the Godhead, right? The 3. And it's all very similar if you look into how other things are organized. But they also have something that doesn't answer to any of those. And these are very elite families. This is elitism at its finest. People will say, "Oh no, they prayed and had actual direct revelation who should be the next prophet." My ass they did anymore, because here's the thing. It's all certain families, and they all interconnect with one another. And here's the thing that we definitely know. If you want to know how the Mormons feel about themselves, here's what they did back in, before things were all on the internet and everything. They built themselves a housing complex, and they built it in Salt Lake City, very near to the temple. And it was where the upper echelon lived, all the high up people, all the who's, everybody like that. And these people come from the Rotary Club or whatever. Like, I'll explain that. But these are very prominent people. And these prominent people all live in this one, well, they used to, this one area, and they called it Mount Olympus. Now, if you want to tell me that they don't know some shit, that's crazy, because they literally are telling you right in your face, and they literally say they can become God. They believe in godhood. They believe that they believe in Adam God theory. And, that's what they believe. They believe we aren't of God, that we don't serve God, that they will be God. This is Adam God theory. And now they say it's not true, and they don't support that anymore. Righto. They modify the church to fit in. They shave off the sharp edges every time something happens that looks bad, and they fix it, just like they used to do this sign in the temple to slit your throat or spill your bowels and cut your belly open, all this weird stuff. They took that out because people didn't like it. They took out, the Masonic hug, embrace with the ear to ear, breast to breast, because men were getting aroused when women had to do the breast to breast thing, and it was becoming a problem. So every time there's a problem, they make it acceptable. But do I think at the tip top any of this shit has changed? Absolutely not. Will they tell us what it is? We're gonna have to figure it out. They don't tell.
Well, I want to know what's your cosmology? Because you go through now, you've done over 150 podcasts.
Yes.
I've listened to over half of them. What what is what's Heidi Love's cosmology at the moment? Like, where are you at with things?
I am definitely a believer of Christ, and I follow that path as in I pray. I'm true to what I do believe in the Trinity, so I believe like the Holy Spirit, God, Jesus, like that whole thing together. But I don't think it's what they say it is. And I also don't think that anyone trumps God. I think the
Hmm.
Bible over and over shows us like we are his children. You are never above the Father. You're not. You're not. Even if your dad dies, he's still your dad. Like it doesn't matter. Like you're his children. And
Hmm.
yes, we are. I think this is really important. And this comes from Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla said, if you really want to know about things and you want to develop your ability to like astral project or weird shit like that, anything like that, you know what he said to do? Go push an old person in a wheelchair on the beach. This is like the stuff he told people to do. He told people to be what? Altruistic, give, give, give. These people that you see that rise up and become um somebody to help others, they get demonized. Like Tesla, he didn't get to have glory like Joseph said. None of the people that are trying to really help people, like actually help people, like just help them for no reason, no gain of your own self, they get demonized, and I think again and again we see that. And that is where also there's that critical junction. If you didn't already make a Faustian bargain, where you will make a Faustian bargain if your heart is not in it, like you said, pre-prepared for everything, because you'll get led astray. And the next thing you know, you're John D swapping wives. Like, and you're just holding your head and going, what the hell did I do to my life? Now my wife hates me. I'm raising this guy's kid. He dies. Like all this bad shit happens after that. And it's because why? Because he wanted more. He wasn't happy. He was brilliant. He was freaking amazing mathematician, astrologer, all these cool things that God gave him. Like, I truly believe at that point, before all this happened, he was really in tune. And what was it? He was bored and he didn't want to accept the fact that he might be a foot servant for the rest of his life. But I'll tell you something, as somebody that's been a foot servant all of my life, because I grew up taking care of everybody around me. And then I grew up and became a caregiver. I'm a nurse. It is the greatest reward. And if people can't figure that out because they don't want to get their hands dirty, that's their problem. So that's
That's
where I
that,
am.
that's how I ended one of my last podcasts was when I was in India, there's two paths to enlightenment that they say. And the first path is called Nana, it's knowledge. And that's when I think of these three-letter agencies, when I think of these hierarchy churches, and like when I think of all these control freak tendencies, that's like the path of knowledge. It's like if I get knowledge, I will attain the whatever, the eschaton. And the
Yes.
secondary path was called bhakti, which is the path of devotion or service. Like devotion and service in Sanskrit are very similar words. And what's so funny is my favorite thinker in India, he said, you can do the Nana route. Most people are tied to being a Nani, going the knowledge route, but all Nana resolves in bhakti. It all
Mhm.
ends up being of the heart. being in service in the heart. And so one way or another, you're going to be humbled. Whatever knowledge you think you're gaining, whatever knowledge you think is the way that now you've outsmarted other people, and because you're the clever one,
Right.
you deserve more. That is utter bullshit. You know,
Maybe you'll get it. Maybe you'll get it here in the present. But I will tell you this, I don't think that's the rewards we reap later. And I think we all know who we are. It's very strange. When I met you, I've met other people, BG Cast. I've met a few people that are very, um, you can tell. You can tell which ones are which sometimes. Sometimes it's not as obvious, but sometimes you feel a real kinship with somebody. You don't even know them. You know, it could be a fan, could be a podcast, it could be anybody. And you just know their heart, you know, and I just wear mine on my sleeve. And you know what? I love the knowledge that I'm given. It's not imparted to me. Like, I don't want that. I want to strive to do the best I can. But everything I do is for the glory of God, all of it. Because at the end of the day, you're not taking this shit with you, people. Like, no,
no,
no.
no, yeah, all you
So,
get to take is relationships. And but
yeah.
what I mean by relationships, you get to take the essence or the quintessence of the relationships that you fostered, you know? And
Yes. Yep.
so,
Love. It's all about love. What did Jesus
yeah.
Christ say when he came back? Love one another. Everything else was hung on the cross. Why did he say that? He was
Mhm.
trying to teach us something, and then people perverted it, and it got all weird. And I just don't think that. I mean, like, yeah, great, the Ten Commandments. You wouldn't do that shit if you were doing that anyway. You wouldn't do any of that shit if you loved each other, right? You wouldn't steal somebody's wife. You wouldn't kill somebody. You wouldn't do any of that crap. Like, come on. If you're living the right path, I like to call it the way. And I know people know why, you know,
Mhm.
they put that in the Mandalorian for a reason. And I don't think it was a good one. I think it was very mocking. You know, this is the way, but the way was what original Christians called themselves, you know, followers
Mhm.
of the way. And I find myself there often, and I just always think, you know what? I've told people things that I'm like, man, I thought this would embarrass me, or like, whatever. I don't care anymore. I just don't care. Like, if it helps somebody else and we all stop acting like our shit's so together, like, and not be so rude to each other too, like, oh, she said this thing wrong or whatever. I'm a human being. Like, okay, but I do vet most of my stuff, like almost everything I say, unless I say I think or this. Like, you can't vet
Mhm.
cabbage babies. They're not going to do it. You know, like, I don't know. I
Right.
can't, but any facts I can, I do. But like at the end of the day, I'm not trying to hurt anybody, and I'm not trying to live at Mount Olympus either. Like, you guys can keep all that shit. Like, I'm
Mhm.
happy. And that's the thing. People that aren't happy, they're always looking for that other way. You know, they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, well, how many people would say they love their life this way?" And I'm like, I don't know. I like my life kind of a lot. You know, I mean, there's things I would change. I miss my daughter, but like, there's some stuff you can't fix. It's not yours. It's
Right.
hers. Like, you got to get out of your own way. I can't remember who said that, but
Mhm.
that's a great quote, you know, get out of your own way. But once again, anybody that tries to put you in the position where they are over you, like you said, like these people like that want control. Anytime you get into control, that's a demon. That's a demonic
Mhm.
spirit. That's not love or guidance or helpfulness. Unless your kid's getting hit by a car, swooping them up. I don't mean like, yeah, don't get them out of the way. Like, that's dumb. But because people take this to the utmost. Oh, well, you would save your kid then? Come on. Yes, I would. But you know, use
Right.
your mind. Like, think though. They don't want you to think. They want
Nope.
you so numb. Yeah, they want you numbed out, and they don't want you, like, at least, even if I'm wrong about everything, which I mean, I could be, books could be wrong, internet could be wrong, whatever you have that's knowledge could change tomorrow. It really could. Because what if they put something out? I mean, and they're like, "Oh, you thought wrong about this your whole life." I don't know. You know, who cares? Do the best you can in that time frame. That's all you could do. So,
I really
yeah.
wonder if in this time frame that we're in, if any of the larger institutions, because these religious institutions, whether you talk about the Mormon institution or the Catholic institution or the Protestant institution, I don't I don't see any of them above corruption. Like
Oh, no.
I'm not aware of any large institution that isn't, especially when they're dealing with essentially social engineering. Whether you
Mhm.
want to see religion that way or not, it is. Religions are social
Yeah.
engineering. And there isn't any social engineering institution out there that is beyond reproach at the moment. And so
No.
for me, I think this is a beautiful time for us to return to the way, to like return to love thy brother as thyself, that whole teaching that Jesus gave us. You know, it's a very common sense thing. The golden rule is a very common sense thing if you have a soul. Like
Yes, exactly.
you know, and you know, we didn't really fully suss out that aspect of what we started to talk about, but like I'm I've dealt with so many different people that I'm of the mind that we're all extremely unique. You
Hmm.
know, far as similar as we are and we look, so much of that stops right at appearance. And
Hmm.
there's so many like deep veins of difference that everybody's experiencing that if you have the ability to love thy neighbor as you love thyself, then you're really practicing so many levels of patience. Like you're practicing so many things because we are so dissimilar in so many ways.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think it's a beautiful way to end our conversation
I do
today.
want to say one little thing about the Nephilim and cabbage souls and all that stuff that we talked about. There is no one that's not available to be saved by adoption from Jesus Christ, because he talks about adoption and being adopted in the spirit in the Bible, and he means it that way. So I'm not
Right.
saying like, oh, they're just screwed. You know, like I
Oh, of
don't,
course.
yeah. Yeah. I just want
Yeah,
to
and
say that because some people might feel bad.
that's I gotta tell you, that's why I've been drawn to the little season theory or the people that are really into that, just because it does say in the Bible. Like let's put it this way, like when I first was a born again Christian over 25 years ago, I had a real problem with the whole book of Revelation because
Hmm.
there were so many different things that were like, one, it was so cryptic, at least to my mind. I didn't know what happened in 70 AD. I didn't have real historical knowledge. And then the lines that were being said in the rest of the dead, like that always kind of stuck with me. I was like, the rest of the dead, like why would there be a little season? And so for me, that was like this big like question mark that didn't that itch didn't get scratched till, you know, just last year with this whole notion of the little season thing coming
You
through.
know, you saying that too, you might want to look at the work for the dead that the Mormons do. I think you got something that's probably important there.
What is
Interesting.
that?
Oh, so they do baptisms for the dead and sealings for the dead, and everything they do in those temples is for dead people, except the first time you go through for yourself, and then you get a new name and all this weird stuff, and then you do baptisms for the dead there, and then you can get married there, but only once, and then the rest of the time you do marriages there, you're marrying dead people, you're being a proxy, and you can do upwards of 50 of them a day on those ceilings. It can, I mean, like, but I really worry about that work now that I know what I know, and knowing all the names. Like, you know how in magical orders they say if they know your name, your magical name, that they can have control over you. And then you look at the symbols on the actual temple itself, which is like pentacles and stuff and pentagrams, but that's not the problem. They're upside down. The way they're facing is concerning, because sometimes I wonder if it's a bonding piece, because they have seals all over the temples and they're working with Solomonic magic. And you know, there's certain things where you can bind, you know,
Mm,
and I am concerned, and with the double mirrors at each other, that they have a portal in there. And that's when you're getting married. You look into these forever mirrors that, show a portal, and they say, well, now you're married for time and all eternity. And you look into the mirrors together. How many things are being attached to you? Like while you're doing this work
Mm.
with you unknowing. That's my number one problem with the church is they're a practicing magical order that doesn't give the people doing any of this stuff any context. They are harnessing all of the energy and all of the works and using it for their own gain. If you
Yeah.
want to be a black magician and do that for yourself and you're not hurting anyone, go knock yourself out. I don't give a shit. Like, do what you want to do. But here's the thing, you can't hurt people or use them or treat them like Goyim. And that's my main problem with the church,
Well, it sounds like they're using the majority of their flock as the actual sacrifice.
They
Because
are.
in all magical rituals, there's a sacrifice, one way or another.
Yep. And I
Like,
don't like the thought of so this is the story for the Mormons, the reason why you have that name. The man tells his name to fake God behind the curtain, and I never know his name. And then he has my name and he knows my name because he saves me through his priesthood, not Jesus Christ. And so I tell him my name and he gets to know it the rest of my life. So he can call me forth in the day of resurrection. Just something you said in that, I was like, wait a minute. And so on the day of raising the dead, and I'm like, man, it makes you really wonder if it's you they're calling forth or like, are you the vessel?
mhm. Because
And that's
I
the
was listening to your podcast where you guys were talking about the doppelgangers and
yes,
having the mirror the mirror individual. Like that's a real thing. Like that's
I
a
know.
yeah.
I'm with
So
you. I am always so nervous for people. Mostly I do this work. People are always like, "You just want to hurt Mormons." I'm like, "I am trying to save your life. Like, I am trying to save your soul. Literally, you have no idea the dark magic that's being practiced over you, and you
right.
don't know what you're subscribing to." Now, if you are in a magical order and you do know that, I got no problem with you.
Mhm.
Like go do it. But when you're using people and you're not telling them the truth and you're telling them this is what we do to go to heaven, wow, that's sad because they're going to
Yeah.
trap people here.
Well, it's so because I always get this feeling when I listen to you describing the connection between the Mormon Church and the three-letter agencies with the military industrial complex. Like for me, it's like very much like the people that go out there, say for the war ritual. That's a big blood rite. That's getting back to the
Hmm.
blood, like the symbols that people
Yep.
wear when they go and like kill or being killed, either way they're satisfying some very very old.
Mars, like you're talking, and that's one thing with Joseph Smith. He had the Mars, insignia on that knife and stuff. Like I get it. Like you're preaching to the choir on that. It's a blood sacrifice. Yeah.
So do you I have two questions that we can wrap up on. Do you know if have you ever heard the term dispensationalism? Like have you ever heard of that term?
Yes. I don't know if I gotta look that up though.
I can
I've
tell
heard it at church. Yeah.
I can tell you, like, so in the mid 1800s, the Protestant church mostly took on the dispensationalist movement, which was essentially made the Bible a futurist doctrine. Before that, like mid 1850s, going back till whenever, I think since Luther had written or had the Bible distributed, the majority of Christians around the world had seen that the vision was that Jesus had already returned. The dispensationalist movement was part of, once again, going back to England and the empire building that England was trying to do. They needed a storyline and a script to give them, I guess you would say, the moral right to go into the Middle East. There were certain things being found in the Middle East that they wanted.
Oh, for
So
sure.
So they pushed this thing called the dispensationalist movement that was that no, Jesus Christ hasn't returned. The millennial reign is going to happen. And this is when all the things about rapture first started coming into the social lexicon. Like before that, nobody was ever talking about the rapture. The rapture
Mm.
was created mid 1800s. Did that ever get, was that part of the Mormon theology? Was that part of the Mormon movement?
So they do believe there is a numbered amount of people, and they give it out here on the earth. They are one of the few people that say God's only going to take so many, and the second anointing reserves your place, even if you do bad things afterward, which is why so many Mormons can do bad things afterward, because the only thing you can't do after you get it is murder someone in innocent blood. So if you rape somebody, you do bad things like take money, steal, any of that stuff, it doesn't matter. Your place is made sure. And that means your place like to go, that he's only going to take so many. So,
So that's very much like the Catholic, like you can buy your way
yes.
into redemption. Okay. So, and that's the thing too, is like it's very, very well known, like for those people that aren't, too steeped into, let's just saying being evangelical, the you can't have Judaism without Catholicism. They're two sides of the same coin. Well, Mormonism, Kabbalism, um, Hebrewism, the New Atlantism, all of that is like one side of that coin. Like it's because you can't have, for those of you out there that don't know, you can't have the way, especially the way the Masons used to be, the Scottish Rite Freemasonry when it was first being developed. It was a dead ringer for the Kabbalism. And
Mhm.
Kabbalism is the height of the Hebrew or Jewish practice, that
And
really
that's what
isn't
we do in the temple. I mean, we dress,
precisely.
everything is, yeah,
So
Kabbalistic.
I'm seeing this throughput line. Like this is like one big throughput line.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
when you're saying Utah is the beehive state, I'm thinking to myself, I instantly go to honeypot
Ah!
because because like so many, I mean, so many of the three-letter agencies, and you're very big at exposing this, so many of the three-letter agencies are run by, these nice Mormons.
Yes.
And what are the three-letter agencies known for? Honeypotting.
Mm-hmm.
That's the main way they get their marks is they actually just honeypot.
Yeah.
They're the masters of honeypotting. So that I find that very funny. So let's just say it sounds like in the intelligentsia of the North American continent, we essentially have a, a Kabbalist cabal. Like that's
Yes.
what is
Yes.
actually running things. Do you
Well,
have an
and
idea?
what's the common denominator in all of them? Every single one of them have Freemasons.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is like I've read books on
Mm-hmm.
Freemasonry where it's like literally you cannot, when you look at the traditions and like all the things that you do for each different, it's just it's a, it, it's
But
Kabbalah.
it but it unites each one of them together. It doesn't matter if the Catholics don't like the Mormons and the Mormons don't like the Protestants and it doesn't matter because it's something that they all have in common. And in the end days, we know they're all going to band together and it's going to be a
So it's
one
the
world order.
universalism because this is what you're
Yes.
saying that Joseph Smith's father was into anyway. Like
Yeah, he was a
Samuel was a
universalist.
universalist. So this is just a
Hmm.
fulfillment because I know like in Crestone, Colorado, right? They have like it's like the UN's proving ground for combining all the religions, you know?
Hmm.
And I know that thread goes north. I know that that this is like some of the biggest programming out there is
Hmm.
this universalist thing. And this is another thing that I really like about the little season action is because the little seasonists, they look at the book of Revelations as being literal and they'll say, okay, look, what would actually get everybody? Because it says in Revelations, in the book of Revelations, that the army that goes to fight against the camp of the saints will be like the sands of the sea. It's
Mm.
essentially like the whole world.
But they believe that everyone's going to be saved. Like that's how Joseph Smith's grandpa believed, is that no matter what you do, all of you will be saved. So I think they're more elite than that. And I think what they did instead is that we're talking about this new world order part where the elites all gathered together and they know who's that they're together, but they don't care one crap about all of us normal people. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
So a little different than grandpa on that one anyway, where
Yeah.
he was like, yeah, let them all come. Like, I don't think Joseph was like that. I think he was like, we got to have some stop, hard stop there. But he also thought he was very special. Every Mormon I've ever met always thinks they're very special, and I don't mean to God, I mean to them.
Yeah.
There's a difference. We all are very special in our own unique ways, and that doesn't have to be displayed or enamored or blown up or like whatever. You do the best at what you can, but like God loves us, and if you have that ability to understand that, you don't have to be bigger than everybody. Like, yeah, I mean, it's just silly to me. Like, you just do your best with your family, your life, your house, your stuff, your day, and try and help other people. Like, I don't know why it's a huge competition, but that's what they've made it, and it's one big secret society. Like, I don't know if it's really going to be, conjoined through. I just say Freemasonry because it's a common denominator. There is something with the elites where they either buy their way in or they're in. It's either bloodlines or Bill Gates with enough money to say, "Hey, marry my daughter. Hey, bloodline guy, marry my kid." You know,
It's
I
so
don't know.
stupid. Like
I agree.
I literally think that whole thing is a honeypot. Like if you're at that level of consciousness to
Yes.
think I'm gonna be sly. Like literally, like let's just look at it like on the deepest spiritual level, I just have to be sly and a little lucky, and I'm in
No.
there.
Yeah, that's
Like
it. Yeah.
that level of consciousness, that is the honeypot. They're just trying to
Yeah.
see how many dupes are gonna go into that.
And how many
That
people are dumb enough to pay their way? Because ultimately, you and I both know if it isn't what they really want, the bloodline or whatever, you're not coming. Like, come
no.
on. No,
Oh
they're
my
just using
goodness.
you. It's just that, they're stepping on the people again. It's just like all royalty from the beginning of time. Why do they
But
have the
this is,
divine right to rule? They have the divine right to rule because it was born to them. It wasn't given.
you know what? That's what I'm gonna call this. At first I was gonna call it Earth Girls Are Hot. Now I'm gonna now I'm gonna call it the divine
Right to rule.
right to dupe.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good one.
It's the divine right to dupe, because think about it.
Yes.
What was Roman law? Roman law, they had one overarching, one might say royal arc Freemasonry. They had one arcing rule. If you're too dumb to know what I'm doing to you, you
Then it's
deserve
okay.
it.
Yep, then it's good to go. And so many people don't even care. Like they're not going to take 5 minutes, to stop watching a game or stop and really engage in the world around you. Like how many people do that anymore? I don't know very many.
Next to none. Next to
Or
none.
read or talk, have these talks. Like they're so important to me because mentally, if you're stagnant, it's just so hard. I can't literally watch the TV. Sometimes now I'm just like, oh, put whatever you want on. Like, I don't care anymore. Unless it's like some survival show or something, maybe I might get into it. But like Alone, I do love Alone. But
I know you. You
like
just want to see the fitness freaks running around. I know you.
I'm always like, man, which one's going to survive? Like competition type stuff is fun, but even then, it's still just entertainment. I mean, I always feel like it's such a waste of time, unless it's a biography or teach me something. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that didn't come to me till later in life, though. Honestly, I think what you said about like almost dying, and Joseph Smith almost died when he was a kid. So
Mhm.
it makes sense, it all makes sense. Like your trajectory changes when that happens to you. And it
I
happens to me a lot. Yeah.
I think so.
Unfortunately.
Heidi, this has been brilliant. I know we could keep
Awesome.
going on forever and ever, but
Forever. Yes. I know
where
we got
can
to
people
wrap it.
where can people find your podcast?
Awesome. I am Heidi Love at the Unfiltered Rise. I'm everywhere podcasts are served. I do have my own website now, so you can go to unfilteredrisepodcast.com if you don't want to go to the other big ones, and it'll have the newest episode on there. I do have a Patreon. Twice a month, I drop something a little different. It's not just like this kind of stuff that's so deep. It's more like Mormons and murders and crazy stuff like that. Like Israel Keys was a Mormon, and I'm fascinated with the brains of people like Ted Bundy was a Mormon. He's on there.
Uh-huh.
So, like theology affects us how, right? Like doesn't speak well for the Mormons. Haha. So check us out there. And I'm just happy to have been on your show. So
Awesome. Awesome, Heidi.
thank you.
Well, I'll let you know when I'm about to release this, and we'll just go
Perfect.
from there. Thank you for all that you
Awesome.
do, and I can't wait
Thank
till the
you.
next time we talk.
Awesome. Bye.
Bye.
You ought to know by now. You ought to know. Well, now you ought to know by now.
Doesn't Heidi Love just rock? We have such a good banter going on. The 76ers, as we like to say, another fire dragon coming with the heat. I really enjoy her viewpoint on what's happening out there in Utah, amongst other places. I've sent her a bunch of information from Jan Irvin that I had gotten over, like 13, 14 years ago now, on the Puritans. And given the whole link to Joseph Smith and his family. And Jan Irvin did breakthrough work going out to Salem, Massachusetts, and actually looking into the historical record of who was actually doing the witch trials. And it ended up being a Jewish sect that were calling themselves Puritans, but that's why I made the little joke. It wasn't a mistyping within the header, if you even read the header, of the Puritans. My Jewish friends, my Israeli friends I would hang out with in Costa Rica like to celebrate the Purim. And I was always wondering what it was. And when I found out what it was, I was like, oh, maybe this type of celebration isn't the best for me to be at, even though none of them had any animosity or anything like that towards me specifically, just the goys in general, right? But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the podcast. There's a lot of things that are coming into focus when it comes to the notion of the little season, especially with the age, with us being in the age of deceit. There's a lot of information that's coming through when you have these massive religious organizations and governmental organizations that are really focused around the occult, and not the occult that's in your favor. It's not like love and light people that really are wanting you to succeed. These are people that are intentionally focusing and harvesting energy away from you. Now, I don't say that to be a victim, because I'm not a victim and no one else is a victim if they don't choose to be. I'm saying it as from an institutional perspective, from the perspective of what the Saturnian energy is, this highly coordinated, long-term corporeal energy. It really seems to have kicked in the mid 1800s, just when the Mormons were getting started. And as you heard in the podcast, they weren't the only ones, man. If you were alive in the 60s and 70s of the United States, you were probably exposed to like 10 new burgeoning religions that were coming up. All of these things, religion, the whole thing with religion and the whole thing with government is to rule the mind, rule the heart. One way or another, for you to be ruled by somebody else, for you to give up your sovereignty. The next podcast that I'll be publishing, we get into how we can access the fourth dimensional energy ourselves, how we can actually move into states of higher consciousness, Christ consciousness, be in jurisdiction with our Creator, and how all of it is founded. Like, you can actually find the verbiage in very real world things when it comes to the law. So I really thank you for coming out and listening this week. I'm going to have more live streams with other content creators. I just did a live stream with JT Follows JC. I'm going to be going on the Paul Staub's live stream very soon again. There's a couple new conferences that once they get confirmed, I'll be going to this year and speaking at. So there's a lot of really good things on the docket here. We have Confluence is coming up. I believe it's the first week in May in Bandera, Texas. I'll be putting out information on that on the Telegram chat. If you haven't, signed up for the Telegram or the Telegram chat, please do, because the Biocharisma Podcast on Telegram is awesome. Our chat numbers hover around 1,000 members. I usually have a tendency to piss people off, so we lose, 1 to 3% every week, but we gain more people than we lose, I guess. So come on out and chat. We are always sharing a ton of information. I think between all of us, there's something like 25,000 different pictures and files that we've shared on there. So it's a great nexus of information gathering, especially when it comes to making observations of our physical environment. It's something I really like to do. I always like to ground things into our physical environment. And we're full on in the springtime here in the Ozarks. So the building has commenced again. So you guys will be seeing more and more photos and videos of the dome build that we're doing. It's really exciting. We're getting the armature in on the domes. We're going to start ferro cementing when we know we're not going to get any more freeze. And I have some cool innovations that I've done with, I guess it's rocket mass heating. I guess that's what you would call it. And I've been writing articles for different people about that. So good stuff on the horizon here. Stay tuned, because there's always some new and innovative way that we look at things. I teased you earlier about I'm going to be starting a new channel on YouTube that is going to be strictly just reviews of products that I endorse. It's not just like a product review or like an unboxing. I'm not going to waste your time with anything that I don't believe in. And I'm going to do it in my own way, because I am a self-proclaimed, what do they call it? A reclaimer. Like, I take a repurposer, I guess they say it. Like, I'll take one thing that's meant for one thing and I'll use it in multiple different ways. So that's really exciting. I'm also in talks with a manufacturer in Mexico for fabricating my full kilns, the biochar kilns in stainless steel. And that's a really exciting development, because I tell you what, driving to go pick up these steel barrels whenever I can find them has proved to be really expensive. The delivery, cutting, like the whole thing, there's no money in it. So I'm trying to find a way that's easier to manufacture these things so I can sell whole units. The stainless steel units obviously are a much higher quality product. And for those of you that bought my old kilns, my first gen kilns, I will have a video out there showing how to actually build these things correctly. I've really slacked on that, and I apologize. But I will get that out as soon as I can. And I really thank you guys for coming out. And like I said, just whenever you can support in the ways that you can. You can also, if you're a PayPal person, you can support me on PayPal. It's coraldomes@paypal.com. Yeah, I'm open to reception. This is a reciprocal relationship, and I appreciate it. So I look forward to hearing your guys' comments on Telegram. So I'll see you on the flip.